Happy Wednesday. We had a really big election last night, if you didn't hear. And I want to get a little bit deeper on something that not a lot of people are talking about, which is Amendment 5. Stay with me.
You better get fired up!
All right, so really fun night last night looking at all the different amendments that were going on in, well, all around the country, but really in the state of Florida. And, some things I just wasn't aware of was that you needed what's called a supermajority for some of these, maybe all of these, which was 60% instead of 50%, which is a majority. There were different things too. I think Amendment 3 and 4, everybody was pretty set in, hey, this is how I want to vote. But when it came to a lot of the other ones, you really had to educate yourself. And I'll tell you, when I was educating myself before I went to the polls, I read them, man, and I think I'm a pretty sharp guy. I was reading those, and I'm like, I don't know if I fully understand this. I don't know if, based on what I think it says, am I hitting yes or am I hitting no? I had to really dig into it to understand it. But one of them that I think a lot of people might question is Amendment 5. And Amendment 5, I won't read it. I'll just tell you what it is. It really asked, do you want the amount that you are saving because you're a homestead property, do you want that to bump up every year with inflation? Right now, there, excuse me, is a $25,000, I can't think of the word now, exemption that you get to claim if you're homestead. You're going to say, no, it's 50. There's two of them, a 25 and a 25. And I think, I'm still digging into this, it's one of the 25s that is capped at 25. And so the question is, should it stay at 25 every single year, or should it move with inflation? Obviously, if it moves with inflation, it's going to give bigger tax breaks to current homeowners, and it would pass a lot of those expenses on to newer homeowners. I'm guessing. Again, these are all things I haven't quite seen the math on yet, but that's the guess. So it would favor current homeowners, which I'm a current homeowner, so I certainly support that. So what it's doing is, in an example, is your $25,000 cap. Let's say, back in, what was it, 2021 or 2022, there was a roughly 8 to 9% increase in inflation. Let's just say 8%. That 25,000 would now increase 8%, which would be $2,000 to $27,000. Now I looked at my home, and my home I think was assessed for, was it 312 was the assessed value? And there's a bunch of different ways you can calculate that, or it's calculated, not that you can calculate it. So you got to dig into that too, because my home is probably worth closer to 500. So if you're thinking, well, if his home is only worth 321, now you could have a $700,000 home, and its assessed value, if you bought it in the right year and everything else, and you held it for a long time, could be 250 grand, right? So it really depends on a lot of things. You could also own a $350,000 home, and the assessed value is $350,000. So there are a lot of things that play into that. But whatever your assessed value is, once you took all of my exemptions off, I believe I was at around 266,000 was the amount that I was paying taxes on. Now, this inflationary increase is not going to impact what you pay into schools, if I understand this correctly. It's everything else. So I looked at mine, and everything else, it would have saved me, had it gone up that 8%, which that's not what we had this year or last year. That was, was it 2-3 years ago? But in that 8% example, I would have been saving, from my math, about $32 a year. So it's not huge, but $32, of course I'll take $32, especially over the years when you compound that, And again, so in a normal year of inflation, which is probably going to be, 3 to 4% is pretty average. So a little less than half of that would be $16. So a little less would be maybe $14-ish that I would save because of that. So I don't think it's a monster vote, obviously, for the budget. The way that everything is calculated, it's going to be some big changes. But for you as an individual, while it's nice and I'll certainly take it, and I voted for it, I don't think it's anything that's going to impact anybody's life in a major way. But it's just kind of cool to have. So I am working on getting a special guest in here to clear up some of the things that I'm not 100% sure on. We'll run some clearer math with you guys, and we'll see if we can get that person in here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But I'd love to hear your comments, your understandings, maybe something that I said that you feel is a little bit incorrect there that you could clarify, specifically on Amendment 5. And did you vote for it or not? And I'd love to hear anybody who didn't vote for it. I'd love to hear the why on that as well. I will throw out one more thing. A lot of people think that, hey, if we lower the tax rate or we lower, now I get a bigger exemption, that it's going to save in taxes. When in reality, they're going to, and by they I mean the city, the county, whoever, the government is going to set what it is that they need in accordance with their budget. And then they take the total home values, we'll just go with that specific tax, and they say, okay, if you own, let's say there's only 100 homes and all our homes are worth the same exact amount, which I know that's a crazy example, but let's just say that would mean I would be worth 1% of the city's total value. Well, then I pay 1% of all the taxes. It doesn't matter how many exemptions I have or whatever else. I'm gonna pay 1%. If I own 2%, maybe I own two houses, I'm gonna pay 2%. So without getting too into the weeds, my point is, regardless of what kind of amendment is agreed upon or not here, the same let me reword that. The tax base isn't going to necessarily decrease because of that. It's still going to be budgeted out. They're going to determine what it is that they need for that year, and those funds are going to be taken. It's just now it's going to be taken a little bit less from people who have these increasing exemptions, and they're going to be put on other people. I'm guessing, and this is where I'd like clarification, on the newer homeowners that haven't had those increases in inflation yet. So it'll be interesting to talk about some of that math. But again, I'd love to hear some of your guys' feedback. Have an amazing day.